So, fear has a sneaky way of infiltrating our lives, especially when it comes to something as monumental as childbirth. Welcome to Faith Based Birthing Podcast. I'm your host, Lori, and today we're diving into a topic that many women face but may not talk about enough, and that is fear in childbirth. So, we're going to explore where these fears come from, how they shape our experiences, and how we can release them to have a more peaceful, empowered birth. So, if you're ready to challenge the misconceptions and embrace the truth about your body and birth, then let's get started. So, for many women, fear of pain, fear of complications, fear of the unknown, that takes center stage in their birth most of the time. But let's pause and let's reflect for a minute, because birth was always meant to be peaceful. It wasn't meant to be something that we fear. So over the years, our cultural ideas and personal stories of childbirth and has framed childbirth as an agonizing and a traumatic experience. And it's no wonder that so many women feel anxious and overwhelmed when they're thinking about labor. And, I actually had a friend 3 kids ago that when she started talking about having a baby, she said, I don't want to because I'm terrified of the pain of having a child. And obviously that changed with her, right? But I want to challenge this narrative. I want to challenge the idea that childbirth has to be inherently painful because it was never intended to be something that we dread. Why would the Father give us something that we dread? It is a divine, natural process. And when we understand it fully, then we can be free from the fear of it all. And we can fully trust the Father and trust our bodies in the process of giving birth. Okay, so let's talk about where these fears actually come from. And in a later episode, we'll talk about how God actually designed your body to go through the birthing process. And if you want more information on this in our book, Restoring Birth, we dive deep into this stuff and we help you study out from a scriptural standpoint and a scientific standpoint what birth is actually supposed to look like. Okay. But so let's talk about where did these fears actually come from? Okay. So based on research and talking with multiple professionals, humans were born with only two natural fears, all right? And again, this is debated, but that's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. That's it. So over time, we've been told what to be afraid of. We've been told what to fear. And we've learned to fear birth because of the stories that we've been told and the medicalized models that often emphasize danger and pain that's associated with birth. Here's the empowering part. If we've learned these fears, we can also unlearn these fears. And that's what today's episode is all about. I want you to understand the root cause of your fears, and I want you to discover how to let go of them. So fear doesn't have to control our birth experience. Fear doesn't have to control our lives, but it does for a lot of us. That's exactly what anxiety is. Anxiety is fear of something, right? And so we have to figure out what that is. So if we remove fear, then we make space for trust. And we trust in our bodies, and we trust in the process of birth, and we trust in the divine design of birth. Then we get to a point where we're replacing that fear with knowledge and wisdom and trust and faith in the Father. So let's take a step back really quick and acknowledge what fear does to our bodies in childbirth. I mentioned this last week, the fear, tension, pain cycle, okay? You see, when we're afraid, our bodies go into what's called the fight or flight response. And this is a natural protective mechanism. It's triggered by the amygdala, our brain's amygdala, right? And that's responsible for processing fear. And it's great, like if you're running from a bear, right? But during labor, it can actually cause complications. And so when we're afraid, labor can stall out, contractions become ineffective, and our body's natural processes are completely disrupted. And so that's why it's so important to address the fears that you have before you actually get to the point of giving birth. And so if we allow fear to run the show, then we may end up experiencing unnecessary interventions or even complications that could have been avoided if we had felt safe and we had felt calm and peaceful and surrendered in this process. Okay. So, how do we unlearn these fears? So, it starts with understanding that fear is not part of who we were created to be, right? We all know that verse, right? You're not given a spirit of fear, but fear hinders our purpose as women, as mothers, as wives. As women, God created us in his image, right? We are designed to bring life into the world with confidence and with peace. And one of the most powerful tools that we have in overcoming fear is taking our thoughts captive. Have you ever heard that? The first time that someone told me to take my thoughts captive, I thought they were off their rocker. But in 2 Corinthians 10:5, we're called to take every thought captive and to obey Christ. So go and look up that verse. I don't want to read it to you because I want you to actually look up this verse. If you hear me talk, you'll hear me say, know what you know because you know it, not because someone else handed it down to you. So I don't hand you all the pieces. I let you go and look it up because I want you to know it for you, not as something that I told you. A practical way to do this, though, once you read the scripture, it's again, 2 Corinthians 10:5. When a fearful thought comes, when any thought comes, right? So you say, I take that. If you're looking in the mirror and you say, oh, I'm ugly. Oh, I'm not a good mom. Oh, I'm a horrible wife. Oh, I'm this, I'm that. No, no, no. You take that thought captive. Father, I take this thought captive. I make it obedient to you. You come and tell me the truth in this. So when a fearful thought about birth comes into your mind, like I'm terrified of the pain, or what if something goes wrong? Stop right there. Acknowledge the thought. The thought is okay. The thought is not the enemy. And then you're going to surrender it to Christ. Ask God to show you the truth in that moment. God, I know that you did not give us a spirit of fear. I know that you did not create birth for us to fear. And if we dig into scripture, we see that he didn't even create birth to be excruciatingly painful. That's not what that scripture means. We'll talk about that later. If you want more detail on that, it's in the book. But anyway, replace that fearful thought with one that's rooted in faith. Father, you tell me the truth in this. I know that my body was designed for this. You made me to give birth and to do this in partnership and conjunction with you. You have prepared the way for this. You have ordained this child in this season to be who they're supposed to be for this generation. And I get to lead that life. And I'm so honored and I'm so privileged to be able to lead that life. So God, you have to replace these lies, these thoughts that I'm having, and these fears that I have with your truth. And this might seem really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. So every time we take these thoughts captive, we break down the walls of fear and we're building trust back up one brick at a time. And you may have the same thought over and over and over and over and over again, but you get to dismantle the broken wall and you get to build something up that's full of stability and a strong foundation and of faith and trust and surrender in that. Okay, those are the keys. You have to have surrender in this whole experience and you have to dismantle fear. Before we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. Fear may be learned, but it doesn't have to define your birth experience. And it doesn't even have to define who you are. I know a lot of you are letting fears define your purpose and who you are in this world. You were made for giving birth. You were made to parent this child in this season at this time. Your body was divinely designed to bring this life into the world. And you don't have to walk this path alone or in fear. You have a purpose in this world. There was a 1 in 100 million chance that you are you. God ordained you for this time, just like he adorned the child that you're carrying for this time. So take time to reflect on the fears that you've learned and ask yourself what stories or experiences or beliefs have shaped these fears. How can you begin to unlearn them and replace them with trust? I hope today's episode helps you take that first step towards releasing fear and embracing a peaceful and empowered and surrendered birth. So, and if you have questions, please, please, please put them below or join our Facebook group and ask all the questions that you want. You can find all the links in the description below. If you need any free resources, we have tons of those. And please share this podcast with someone that you know needs to release fear, even if it's not in birth. Let's release the hold the enemy has on us, and let's transform your life and, not only your birth experience, but being a wife, being a mom, being a woman of God. Let's transform that so that you walk in your purpose, ordained in who you were created to be for the purposes that God created for you. So I love you. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.